Back from the dead. Back from the dead. Back from the dead.
Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. It is Krystal, yours truly, here with Ghost Girl Diaries. It is a paranormal podcast for those of you that are brave enough to join the circle. And today we're talking about Nostradamus, and I'm going to bring in my sidekick for the day, which is Elfie music. Yay, everyone can hear us now.
That's awesome.
You know what? It's just one of those days. Well, let's see. It's Mercury retrograde. We're right in between the eclipses. There's literally like a blood moon Scorpio eclipse tomorrow / tonight, like goes into the weekend. And yeah, that's like dark. I hate Scorpio moons. That's just personally. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, and it's Friday 13th.
And yeah, let's just add some sprinkles on there. So if you're wondering why audio wasn't working, there you go. So anyway, how was your week, Elfie?
My week's going well and everything. Just been really enjoying everything. Weather's turning nice, so I'm like, yay.
Good, yeah. It's been good in Vegas, but Sunday it is supposed to hit 100 degrees, which I'm not looking forward to.
Oh, God.
So that means summer's a little early this year. I prefer it when we've had a few years where summer didn't really hit till like the second or third week of June. And that's really nice. But when it hits early this year, like, one thing I don't like about Vegas is the heat in the summer. The summers are not fun. Do not visit Vegas in the summer. You're a fool. Don't come to Vegas till September. It's just too hot. Really October, but like September can even be hot. You know what I mean?
Halloween season, perfect time of year anyways.
It is, yeah. It's oh my God, Halloween on the Strip. Have you ever? You've been to Vegas one time, right?
Yes, I've been to Vegas. I unfortunately didn't go around the Halloween season, but I have a feeling that it's just like even better.
Oh my God, Halloween in Vegas, like downtown, is like gotta be the best adult like party. And like you literally drive. It's just fun to even drive down there. Because they're just it's only adults. Obviously, kids can't really go in the casinos. You know what I mean? So it's just like a giant Halloween party. It's amazing. Halloween this time of year, or that time of year is amazing. And you're like accepted to wear whatever you want because it's just Vegas. You know what I mean? So
yeah, the weather is perfect for it too.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Colorado where Halloween you have to, plan according. It usually snows in Colorado by the time Halloween hits. It will probably same for Pennsylvania.
Costume, and then you have to bundle in your jacket on over top of it.
Yep, you have to plan. I used to have to wear like a onesie under my like princess outfits. I hated it. I was like, I hate it. It's so bad. My dress is ruined. You know what I mean? Monica just gave us a shout out. We got 32. What are we at now? Do I dare look while we're sitting here? So TikTok, I've been hitting it pretty hard. And we did have a viral video. I'm going to peek right now and see where we're at. We're at 32.8K on TikTok for Ghost Girl Diaries.
I mean, it's been this whole week, it feels like, because I remember seeing you post it, and it's like, you would post like, oh, we hit this, and then it's like, the hours later, oh, we now have hit this. It's like, wait a minute, you just hit this.
I know. We got
10,000 more.
We got about 17,000 followers in a matter of like 2 days. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we did have one viral video that I did, and it's Graveside Highway. I've now pinned it to our channel because it's actually still going up. And it has 282.8 thousand views.
Nice.
I still got it.
The algorithm sweet spot right there.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's interesting because I've done social media management for obviously years. I mean, like my journey in social media started 2015 when the original YouTube channel started, you know what I mean? And so, in order to run your own, business or whatever, you really do need to figure out the algorithms. And I cracked the code of the TikTok algorithm. I've been cracking it. Kat knew it. We knew it was just a matter of time before we were going to hit something big. And the other day, And it's actually funny because if you, so the video that I did that went viral is a one that's called Graveside Highway. So I'm basically doing these little miniature versions of like haunted locations. So if you're not following us on TikTok, follow us. But it's about this haunted highway in Florida, right? And I am familiar with haunted locations in Florida because my dad lived in Sarasota for most of my life. So if I'd go visit, I always knew about all the haunted stuff. I've been to probably equal haunted places there as I have Colorado. And then what happened was a bunch of people started like making fun of Florida because you know how they have like all the extreme headlines all the time. So if you look through the comments, like there's people arguing with, it's hilarious actually. People are arguing with each other about like how dumb Florida is. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's crazy though, because I'm like, they're boosting the algorithm, so I can't really complain about it. You know what I mean? So anyway, it is random though, out of all the videos, it was that sporadic one that kind of went. So, but yeah, social media management and algorithms are very, very important, and I have absolutely cracked the code to that. And Elfie is now on TikTok, everybody. Yes, she is. We pressured her to the point where she cracked. The egg cracked. And
that is doom scrolling and going like, hey, I need to do something.
I'm so happy that you're on there. And I told Elvie too, like she's just started, and I'll help her, of course. If you want any help, you know, you can ask. But she's it's at Elfie, EILFIEM. So if you want to follow her, it's Elfie M, all one word, no pauses or anything like that. But she's doing, she has some tarot videos and some creepy haunted witchy books that are, of course, her book collection, you guys. This is Elfie is our actual librarian. Like she is,
did not give it away.
She is the Ghost Girl Diaries librarian, like officially, you know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, so you got to follow Elfie, and we're gonna boost her. We're gonna get her going next. But anyway, so today I'm kind of excited about this topic, and I texted you today, and you said the same. You know, Nostradamus, like whether you believe in him or you believe in psychics. Or I mean, at his time, they were kind of called like oracles, is what they would. Mediums weren't really a thing. Psychics weren't a thing. It was more oracle. And whether you believe or not, I find people like this fascinating. Do you?
Oh yeah, and I mostly knew him for more the oracle sense, but like really getting into more his history and everything. I mean, he has many layers to him that I think people don't really think about. They think more of like the Nostradamus prophecies, but it's like, no, this guy's pretty cool just all on its own too.
Well, it is, but he did predict a lot of stuff, and I mean, there's controversy surrounding him, but like, let's be real here. Anytime you're talking about a psychic or a medium or anyone, a prophecy, being able to see into the future, I feel like all of these people are somewhat scrutinized, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. And you have to remember too, he was doing this during a time where it was not a very safe thing to be doing anything remotely oracle or soothsaying like either.
Well, this could have technically been considered, Satanism or witchcraft, or you know what I mean, like talking to the devil, like dark stuff, and of warnings, like of prophecies. And you're right, your life could literally be at stake for doing something like this. But he was like so sure of himself. He wrote one book, that book was accurate, and then he just started writing books and books and books about the future. The other controversy that sort of does go around him, which we'll kind of get into later, but if you're talking about when he was born, which was like, 1503? That's crazy. 1503.
Yep.
And then he died in 1566, okay? Mm-hmm. That really wasn't that long ago. I mean, that long ago. You know what I mean? And
and this is during the era when there is the printing press and books and everything. So it's an interesting era of great expanse of knowledge. Also, unfortunately, the Inquisition. So a lot of big changes were happening in this guy's time and everything.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, I feel like, and this is just me, when you think of people like really big public figures, like, I mean, you could even talk about Albert Einstein, who like literally died in like the 60s or 70s or something like that. You think of like big people like philosophers, and then you can even go into Plato. Socrates. For some reason, I feel like the human brain just clumps them all together, and they were all from like Greek mythology times. Like, and they're not, but like your brain just like, they're these like ancient like genius philosophers, and then you look at Nostradamus, you're like, no, that was like literally like 300-400 years ago. Like it really wasn't that long ago, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, and he's fascinating. Also, like if. As we'll see too in his life, is unfortunately the crux of it always goes back to the plague. The plague continues.
Well, yeah, I didn't even realize he was alive during that time, and like he went to a university. I'm jumping ahead, but he had to quit university because there was a plague outbreak.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of unfortunately followed him throughout his life of things happening worldwide because of plague.
Also, I feel like we can relate after Rona.
Yeah, and it's just, you look at it going like, yeah, that sounds about right.
It doesn't seem, it's weird though, like seriously, like you think about pre-Rona, which was like, 2019 technically. You think about pre-Rona, so many years ago, when we were free and we could frolic without masks. No, you think about that, and there was a time where all of us would have said, I can't imagine what, the Black Plague was, or Spanish influenza. Like, and now here we are, and we're all like, oh girl, I know what it was like, and it was some rough stuff,
Yeah, and the only big difference is, honestly, we have better medical advances and everything compared to back then, between like the 1990 influenza and then even back further the plague. So it's like, the further back you get, the more screwed you are.
It's true. No wonder. I bet people were, we lost a lot of lives with this, but imagine, oh my God, yeah, not having, woo. Wow. Yeah, no wonder people were dying left and right. You know what I mean? Well, I want you to start this off because Elfie, loves our history. She does all of our history, and she, you know how she gets into this, guys, and she did not, slack like normal. So Nostradamus, he's born December 14th, 1503, which I found interesting. He's a Sagittarius sun, and he was born in France.
Yes, Saint-Romain, France. It's interesting because if you look at his life, he was actually born to a Jewish family, and this was during a time of great persecutions, and also it was basically a time of, you either get out or you convert to Catholicism, because you have the Inquisitions going on, you have the persecution going on. So his family apparently actually converted to Catholicism to avoid any kind of persecution and everything.
Which is dramatic, because, that means their lives were pretty at stake, essentially.
Well, yeah, essentially, like, if you were not Catholic, then they were like, oh, you can't be here, or terrible things. But what I find more interesting is that even though they, on paper, what you could say is they convert to Catholicism, but it kind of, if you look through the history of his life, it kind of feels like under the surface they, to the public eye, they were Catholics now. But I feel like possibly behind closed doors, they still retain a lot of their practices in their belief system. It was just more for safety's sake that they said they were Catholics. Mm-hmm. And this might be why he had some of the information and knowledge he had that he carried on through the rest of his life and everything, especially when we get into like herbal medicine and astrology and all his know-how and everything. So that part I find quite interesting with Nostradamus. They actually, I forgot to add it, but they actually end up changing the name. It was a different name. Nostradamus was the name they took when they converted to Catholicism. So his full name was Michel del Notre-Dame, or Nostradamus. So that's why, and from her on, we'll just call him Nostradamus.
Mm-hmm. Another, I think I found, you mentioned the herbalism, and I didn't even know that about him. He was like heavily into apothecary studies, and which I think is, let's be real, that's a witchcraft thing. You know what I mean? Like, and back in the day, of course, that would have been considered a way of like medicine, which he did get his doctorate. But I thought like this guy was really well-rounded, and I feel like people don't realize there was so many extra facets to him rather than just being like giving you prophecies.
Yeah, it's interesting because the prophecy parts and the astrology part actually didn't come until later in his life. Like, the first part of his life was mostly dedicated to being a physician and actually helping people with the bubonic plague and everything. And actually his information or his knowledge of apothecary and herbalism, when he went to universities, and I think it was the first time he got kicked out and everything, there was some talks in the biographies that because he knew this information about apothecary and herbalism and more like not university practice, they kind of looked down at it. They thought it was just kind of herb working country folk knowledge, and it wasn't considered like high university knowledge, or this is not what doctors do. And it's like, wait, this also helps people, but they kind of looked their nose down at his knowledge of herbs and medicines and everything.
Well, at that time, though, medicine, what would you do? You know, I feel like at that time, medicine was still kind of being invented in a way.
Yeah, medicine, even though if we look now, we've come a long way realizing that in ancient history, a lot of cultures had a lot of knowledge about medicine in the body than we thought of. But during this time, especially like in French stuff, it wasn't so much that they were lack of knowledge. It was more like what they accepted as a practice, what they accepted as a legit means of being a doctor and everything. That was more of where it was kind of poo-pooed at, if it didn't come out of the universities, if it wasn't accepted by the doctors or even accepted by the church, then it was considered like not relevant to them.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, is like the church had a big part at that time in medicine, which I mean makes sense because religion was like probably the core of everything. But nowadays you would think that and you'd be like, that's a strange crossover. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want someone of the church to like medically diagnose me or work on me or give me an opinion. Maybe a blessing, but like that's about it, you know. Yes. I'll take the blessing.
I mean, also you have to think too, like this is time too when basically anyone could really say they're a doctor. I mean, you could go to university and get some sort of official paper or sanctioned by the church and everything, but pretty much anyone could say I'm a doctor and not have to have any like licensing by any board or anything,
like credentials, like specific credentials, yeah.
Which, on one hand, is understandable, especially like if you lived in a more rural area, you didn't always have access to doctors, so you had to work with what you had and everything. But on the other hand, it could also bode not so well for like, yes, I'm a doctor, and they end up like killing a bunch of people because they gave them murder.
Well, that still happened. I mean, and it still happens today too. You know what I mean? Not that I wouldn't have a knowing on that after my mom murder. Anyway, jeez, but like it's interesting because so he basically started his medical practice like education at the age of 14, which to me sounds insane. When I was like, what?
Oh, yeah. But we also have to think, too, and this is the time period that you didn't really get a childhood. Basically, once you were old enough to, like, pick up things and do things, and you were kind of put to work and everything. So I'm sort of surprised, but not hugely surprised of the age when he went off to the university and everything. And apparently one of the reasons why he got kicked out was also because he kind of talked back to the professors and questioned them on everything, which I'm not surprised.
Okay, pause with that because I know that Elfie's doing, the research on this, but I do read astrology charts. We don't know the time of his birth, so I can't give you what his ascendant is. I have no idea what that is. To study his chart, I would have to I always look, especially for him, if he was seeing prophecies in the future, he would have to have a lot of 8th house and 12th house placements because those are both like psychic ability houses. So that's where if I don't have the time of birth of someone, that's how I determine what their ascendant could have possibly been. And considering he was a prophet, that would be where I would look for him. But I did find this interesting. So he's a Scorpio moon. And he's it says that he was right on the cusp of like Capricorn and Sagittarius, depending on how you would read this, you know what I mean? But I did find another chart that somebody tried to like depict by using an example. They do what I do. So they basically found his 10th house was with his midhaven, which was also conjunct his Mercury, which I find interesting. 10th house is important because that's where you're a public figure. That's fame. 10th and 11th house usually represent fame. And his 11th house, if it was there, it would be Aquarius. And that's where his part of fortune lies, if this is correct. So part of fortune is money, how you make money. Falling in your 11th house means you have a following of people that like contribute and pay to your life. And that means that his Scorpio moon would fall in place with his Lilith in his 8th house of Scorpio, which once again, 8th house is considered psychic abilities. So I don't know. I just found it interesting that he was a Scorpio moon. Now, if his chart was read this way, he would be an Aries ascendant, which also makes sense because Aries is known for being one of the first to do things. So he was really considered like the first prophet of his time to write these kind of massive books of like predictions. So in his North Node with, I think it's Uranus and another planet, I can't see from here, I don't have my glasses, they fall in the 12th house of Pisces, which Piscean energy is also known for being psychic, and 12th house is psychic. So anyway, I just wanted to depict his chart because I do find it oddly accurate just because I do read astrology. That Scorpio moons, Scorpio placements alone are just psychic. And I know that because Elfie has Scorpio placements and Kat is a Scorpio ascendant. My South Node's in Scorpio. But anyway, I just had to chat about that. I find astrology important when you're talking about public figures. So if we're correct, it would be Nostradamus would have ascendant in Aries, sun in Sagittarius, and moon in Scorpio. So very, very interesting.
That's very neat. So wait, so with the houses, then does that mean that would fall in line with later on when he became very well known and actually was very well received in court and everything? That would actually fall in line with his houses?
It would, because his 10th house has Capricorn in it. So 10th house represents fame, fans essentially. And then your 11th house is who follows you. So, like, what kinds of people follow and respect. With his 11th house in Aquarius, that means he's very smart, intelligent. Aquarius signs are known for being one of the smartest signs in the zodiac. Capricorn in the 10th house is an earth sign, and they're usually workaholics and solid with what they do and how they say things. So, to me, that's interpreted as when he would give this information out as a 10th house Capricorn, it was believable. Even in 1500, whenever he wrote his first book, like literally people believed him because he sounded solid and he sounded like he knew what he was talking about. And I think, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but what I read was that he wrote one book about like current times and everybody took, it was legit, like to the people. And because people were so blown away by how legit that was, he just started writing more and more and more. And he literally called them like almanacs. Yeah. And then he literally went into the future. Like where we're at now. So I don't know. I just find it interesting.
No, actually, it's very interesting. It falls in line with a lot because, especially when you're saying like he was very workhorse, very driven and everything, because even outside of prophecies and everything, like this guy, like he did his job as a physician. Like he went all through Southern Europe and everything. He went and helped people. He did a lot of medical advancements that were kind of frowned upon back then, but actually saved people's lives, which it's very interesting.
That's very true.
So that actually falls a lot within, like you said, with the charts and everything, of his drive, both as a physician, but later on as a astrologer and as a soothsayer too.
Yeah, he had a lot of different sides to him, which is interesting because I think why I find it fascinating is like literally, let's compare it to paranormal. Okay. Yeah. Paranormal people are defined in like two ways. You either believe or you don't, right? So like, it's really hard for what we call skeptics to believe because they have a usually extreme science brain, right? Like, they're so science to the point where, like, if you can't explain it through, like, actual scientific data, it doesn't exist, essentially. Oh, and then you have Nostradamus, who was like, no, I'm actually, like, a scientific medical professional practicing medicine, and I do prophecies. So he literally merged the two. And I think it's a really good example because I don't think everything is always black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you know what I mean? Even in paranormal, right? I mean, I have had my experiences. I know it exists. I don't need scientific data on that level to show me that my mom's been visiting me or whatever, or I have her in my house. You know what I'm saying? And it's just interesting. I wish that wouldn't be so black and white anymore with everybody.
Well, to me, especially skeptics, it's more like I sometimes feel like it's not so much always they are so driven by the science of it, but more of the stubbornness of, okay, either you're going to believe it or you're not going to believe it, but if you keep trying to force someone to prove to you, then you're just now digging your heels in, that you're not really trying to find proof. Now you're just trying to aggravate someone going, no, this is not real. But it's like, well, obviously there's no way to prove it to you. You're not going to take anything as
stubborn is the perfect word for it. And the reason I say that too is I do not argue with skeptics. I don't. I don't care if someone believes or not, honestly. I'm not here to make someone a believer in paranormal. And I had a few people that were really trying to start arguments with me on Ghost Girl Diaries, like TikTok, about like why it's not real. Like, I don't care if you believe or not. I will say that when you finally, if you do have that one major paranormal experience in your life where that we've all had, where you have that moment and you're like, okay, there's something, then you become a believer. But I can't say anything to those people. It's weird because like they get really defensive on one side about not wanting to believe, like that you're fake and what you're doing is fake. But yet it's like an endless argument, which is why I don't argue with people about it. Because it's like you'd have to experience it to understand it. So it doesn't matter what I say. There's nothing I can say to help you believe or understand until you have that personal firsthand experience yourself. And I just wish that it wasn't so segregated and so black and white, like literally how Nostradamus lived. Like, that's amazing. That tells me that it's more of a modern day mindset of, oh, well, if there's no scientific data on paranormal, like ghosts just don't exist. I honestly think, though, and this is just an opinion, we'll get back to Nostradamus, I do think sometimes that's people like really in fear of the other side. And they don't want to experience it to the point where they've shut it off so hard that they won't experience it.
Oh, like just extremely blocking themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, like it's like they really may have an internal fear of it, possibly from Hollywood showing all, demons and the dark side. So therefore they don't want to they've just shut it completely down.
Well, it also actually, I always find it interesting too, where you have the people who like close themselves up so much that they don't really experience anything, or they're just like put the blinders on. But then you have the people who are like, I want to experience it like right now, and then stuff actually starts happening and they freak out. It's like, what did you expect to happen when you asked for something to happen? You didn't specify.
Well, that's sort of like,
I want something to happen.
Psychic abilities. I think that we all are born with the possibility of having abilities. But if you are closed off to it, or if you've had a lot of trauma, there's certain things I think that factor into it that you won't be able to develop it. And it is something that you have to develop, like literally riding a bike. Sort of like how I've developed being able to communicate with my spirit guides, even in my dreams and with my mom. Like, I didn't really have that ability till my mom passed away in January. But if you're not open to those abilities or trying to figure out how to access them, you won't.
Yeah.
You just won't. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Anyway, I just like how Nostradamus really, embraced it all.
Yeah. Oh, also quick note on the psychic abilities. I think I look at it like a muscle that you have to exercise, and both accessing it, but also how to kind of not clamp it down so you don't experience anything, but kind of like filter it and everything. Because I've encountered people who are like, I get everything, I can't turn it off. It's like, yes, you can turn it down, you can turn it off, but you have to actually try and practice.
And it's not easy.
So it's like a muscle.
It is. Yeah. I don't know. It's, it's just, you have to be open to it, I guess. But I think, one thing I've noticed just being on TikTok and getting the amount of followers that we have in such a short time, just with, comments, I've realized that I don't know if people have been really psychologically affected by the negative side effects of paranormal. And what I'm saying, I know that sounds deep. That's my Aquarius moon just came out. I'm sorry. My Aquarius moon's showing. Let me hide it. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I think I even did a video about this. I think that there's been so many movies and TV shows about paranormal demonic activity that it has scared people so bad that it has literally caused like a psychological issue within like these generations. So now they're like afraid to open up to experience paranormal, or afraid to open up their third eye, access their psychic abilities. I think there's a psychological blockage happening because of fear from the media. Yeah.
No, I do remember seeing your video about it and everything. And I would agree that between Hollywood and even just the paranormal shows today and everything, unfortunately, there has been too much of an emphasis on like anything remotely, not even bad, just reactive. Anything reactive is suddenly labeled as it's a demon. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no. First of all, no. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. It is a much rarer thing to encounter anything which of a negative force. And I agree. I think it does freak people out because you experience stuff when you're in a place, and if you're constantly in a state of fear that you're going to have some demon follow you home, of course everything's going to feel negative to you. Everything's going to feel bad when you're in a place, even if it's just something probably just trying to communicate with you. And if they're trying to touch you, you're going to freak out like, oh my God, it did something to me. It's like, it was trying to talk to you. That's all. Mm-hmm. It didn't hurt you. It didn't do anything. But yeah, no, I think there is this buildup of fear and everything, thinking around the corner everything is bad. Mm-hmm. And I've encountered also when talking to people, because it's like they really want to get into this, they really want to get into the paranormal, but they're afraid of something following them home. It's like, well, I mean, I can't tell you like that will never happen, but you just have to establish your boundaries, and you have to actually put your foot in the water to actually start working on making the connections and everything.
Yeah, I've had some interesting mixed feedback on, I've done some spirit box sessions with my guides, and then I had communication with my mom. She loves this UV nail lamp that I have in my office. She's constantly turning it on. But I can't tell you how many people came in the comments and told me that it's not my mom, it's a demon.
That's just
and I had to block the word demon from our comments section, because it was just like, first of all, you don't know my practices. You don't know how I keep my energy sacred and safe. Of course I use sage. I'm indigenous in Palo Santo, and it just doesn't matter. Like, you don't, just because you saw a minute video doesn't mean you understand how I practice. And I'm sorry, but it's not a demon in my house. You know what I mean? But you're right. I do think that to get to the level of confidence that especially you and I have, we have been in this for a long time. And you're right. It did take some mistakes along the way. I'm not going to lie and say I haven't been followed home. I get followed home very often, in fact. I know you've had experiences too. And that's, unfortunately, through those bad experiences, you learn how to, like Elfie said, establish boundaries and put your foot down, salt rim your house. Like, there's so many things that you can do to keep yourself protected. But even if you were to explain this to people, because of, once again, the psychological aspects that have occurred from all of these paranormal shows, always saying that it's demonic and bad or evil, they will not believe you even if you gave them a to-do list of how to protect yourself. They still won't believe you.
No, and I personally feel in some ways it's that people want to experience a haunting at one of these locations like it's an amusement park. They go there, they have sounds heard, they hear footsteps, ooh, they go home, it's fine. They don't want to actually interact with anything on a person-to-person level, because once you start doing that, yes, things will start
attaching themselves. Yeah,
they're attaching, but it's not even the idea of like, oh, negative things. It's just more like you are literally putting up a flare now, going, hey, I want to actually talk with you, and they're like, oh my god, someone wants to talk with me. And I think that's the thing. People want to have a paranormal experience without having any possible consequences of having a paranormal experience. It's not even bad consequences. It's just you interact with something, there will be residue left. You will change, they will change, there will be change no matter what. And they don't want that. They just want the amusement park experience of the paranormal.
Well, and I also think that if you lead with fear, like you go into a location afraid and fearful, you're going to get what you're looking for, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And
front load yourself.
It's literally the law of attraction. Like attracts like. If you go in with fear, the energies that like to scare people will be attracted to you. If you go in looking for a demon or afraid you'll find a demon, guess what you're going to probably find? Something dark, probably, because your energy is vibing at that same level. And once again, I can't really train you on this because this is just something like Elfie and I've been to hundreds of locations at this point. Like, it just takes practice. And we have also had those mistakes too, where like, oh, Ed Gein followed me home again. Got to get rid of this guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want Leatherface in our house. You know what I mean? Like, it's happened.
It's a lot of on-the-job training, honestly. You can read all the books, but not until you're actually in the field doing any of it. And I sometimes feel like people think if they have enough electronics around them, there's a buffer or something that's the only way to get any experience. You gotta unfortunately hit the pavement and go to the places to have anything happen.
All right, let's get back to Nostradamus. I know we kind of chant. It's okay. I mean, it's part of the conversation. I know, but it's part of it, though. You know what I mean? Like, it is. It's part of it. So he did enroll in the university in 1519. At the age of 15, that's just crazy to me. And then this is when his whole town was hit with the plague and the university literally shut down. That is insane to like, I mean, once again, just comparing it to what we've already been through the last few years, it feels creepily aligned.
Well, and what's interesting too, because I even took a quick search through this, like, when we think of the plague, especially the Black Death and everything, we think of it like it was like a one and done deal, but actually it came in waves. Like, there were multiple. There was the big wave in the 1300s that I believe they estimated, because there's no way to get exact number. They estimated that it was like 20 million people, or possibly in Europe and England alone, died from the first wave of the Black Death and everything.
Wow, my God.
And then it would subside, and then you would get little pockets. And then during Nostradamus' time, there was another wave that came into Europe. And this is when it started really hitting, especially France got hit the hardest with it. And so during his time, they would experience like almost little mini waves, one after the other, coming through and everything. So like I said, he left the one university, enrolled in the other, and then unfortunately that one closed down because the plague hit.
So he literally just went like on a journey after that, and he literally, which I guess that's smart, but he didn't live in fear, so that's interesting, because I feel like we all had, you know, the angel on our shoulder of like wearing a mask and staying inside during Rona, and then the other side where we're like, at this point, I just don't care. I need to see people and have human interaction after lockdown. Like, and he was like literally like, okay, I'm out. I'm not afraid, and I'm going to travel France for 8 years.
So he traveled around, he became a physician, he started treating people of like, and this is actually the part that I find very interesting about him, because so when it came to treatment of bubonic plague. Their method back then was basically you were shut up in a room, no light, no fresh air, nothing like that. And on top of that, they would bleed you. They would just drain you of some blood because their thought process was that they would be bleeding out some of the bad blood, the polluted blood from the disease and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Nostradamus, on the other hand, had a different method that was a little more effective than what they were doing. So he practiced with his patients was fresh air and sunlight, water, and he would do a herbal mix which included rose hips, which are very high in vitamin C. Hmm. So this herbal mix plus the fresh air, and also clean sheets. So basically cleanliness, fresh air, fresh water, and a herbal mix of vitamins was his prescription for his patients. And this kind of launched him into stardom of he saved many people with this, and it's like, oh my God, you're amazing.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting because you do think about it where even just common knowledge of like mold or darkness or like infection grows in like dark, wet places. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But when you like sunlight is healing, outdoor fresh air is healing. You're right. Cleanliness, clean sheets is healing. And it's kind of weird that it's like that feels like it should have been common sense.
Yeah, but it was the idea that they didn't know at the time where the plague was coming from, that it was, as we later found out, it came from the fleas off the rats. Mm-hmm. They thought it was in the air itself. So they thought, okay, if you just close the people up and everything, then the air can't get in, so it'll be fine. Cleanliness was kind of a questionable back then. I mean,
that's true.
We now know they were better than what we think, but it wasn't as high on the list.
Running water just wasn't very accessible either. I mean,
no, not really. Running water, but also clean running water was not very accessible, especially when you got into any of the larger cities. Mm-hmm. It was much harder to find clean water.
Wow.
So, he ended up, let's see. So he traveled around. He helped with this and everything. He moved to, where did I go?
Moved to London. Is that the part you were talking about?
No, he didn't move.
No, that's 1666. Just kidding. He wasn't alive then.
He moved to Agen.
He was a ghost at that point. He was a ghost in London is what he was.
He actually moved to Agen, France. He did marry, and he actually had 2 children at this time. So also at this time, he started publishing. He hadn't yet published anything dealing with the mysticism that we would later see. He actually published basically a cookbook. Mm-hmm. It would have recipes, what he had prescribed to people, but it would also have hygiene, brushing your teeth, keeping your hair clean, keeping your clothes clean, everything. Today we would think is common sense, but back then maybe not as much. And this really, like I said, launched his career as a great physician, as someone who, even though they are physicians, kind of side-eyed because they're like, wait, Lansing does great job, and he actually is saving his patients.
But he did go against the opinions of the church basically through this, because the church was not for the way he was doing things. So the church was basically saying is if you work with Dr. Nostradamus, expect to die, essentially. You'll have a death sentence because this isn't what we think that you should be doing to heal. But I think people just trusted him. Once again, if he does have Capricorn in his 10th house, that makes sense. He seems stable. He seems like he knows what he's doing. He seems like a hard worker. People are surviving under his watch. So it's just so weird to me because I feel like this side of him is not seen.
Mm-hmm. No, this part of him was very interesting to me. That I'm like, I want to know more about this. Unfortunately, this is also when it turned a dark turn for him. So once again, we can always say we blame the plague again on this. Another round of plague had broke out, and him being the physician he was helping and he was taking care of. And while he was gone, unfortunately, his wife and children passed away from the plague.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it's one of those, like, the only thing I can figure is he must have been quite far away when this happened and just didn't know what was going on until it was too late.
That also could have been the trajectory of changing him from like physician to like prophet. Because like, losing family like that is traumatic. I know. I just went through it,
Oh,
and it can,
especially from something he was helping people with.
Yeah.
He was helping curing them of.
Or he is a doctor and he could have helped, but he wasn't there to help. Yeah, it's traumatic. Yeah. I feel like he would have been traumatized. And once again, I feel like that's not spoke about. People don't realize that.
No, it gets even worse. So after his wife and children passed away, his in-laws actually sue him. They sue him because they felt that he should have been able to save them, that he should have been able to do something and everything, but because he did not, because he was not capable, they wanted his wife's dowry back. Mm-hmm. So they sued him for the dowry back, and apparently also at this point the patrons, which this is another thing. A lot of times you would have wealthier people would become your patrons who would give you income and whatnot. You saw a lot, especially with artists and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, his patrons also stopped paying as well and turned their backs on. So this kind of really brought down his reputation. Like everyone kind of now doubted his abilities because they feel like, well, why couldn't you save your family if you're such a great doctor?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's dark. I mean, so it probably felt like the whole world was sort of against him at that point.
Yeah, it was probably, and so similar to like when he was younger, he once again gets on the road and travels around south of Europe doing what he knows best, which is being a physician. Another wave of the plague had hit. Apparently, there was a very heavy rain season in France, and this caused the plague to like hit very heavy pockets and everything. Mm-hmm. It's not sure why. I'm thinking the only thing I can figure is because everyone was kind of cooped up. But also along with them, it's all cooped up. Also, probably the rats too. So,
the rats and the fleas. Yeah, I mean, it's wet outside and. I hate the word moist, but I was going to use the word moist. So it's like it's growing, right? Like when it's humid out and wet out, and just every flea babies and God, Jesus. And not knowing where it's coming from, you're right, and worried that like just the air you're breathing in is going to cause it.
Oh yeah, so it was just unpleasant, and also probably I wouldn't be surprised too because of such heavy rains. Even though it was very lucky, they did have something in the way of sewage drains that probably kind of backed up too and caused a lot of nastiness.
Once again, not having clean running water and proper ways to dispose of poo-poo. We don't need to start that combo again. You know what I mean? After Cat's leprechaun foot. You know what I mean?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, if you think about it, like London itself, their water system or their drainage system wasn't exactly improved. I mean, they did have it, but it wasn't exactly improved until like the Victorian age. Mm-hmm. That was when it actually was improved. So there's still some time before they fix that problem.
My God, that's gotta smell good. You know what I'm saying? So he starts scrying at night. Well, he remarries, right? He remarries.
Yeah, so he rebuilds his reputation, but so apparently with that big pocket plague, he was actually able to save pretty much a whole village. Like he rebuilt himself, he rebuilt his reputation. He settles in Ceylon, France, and remarries and has children there as well. And like you said, this is when he starts scrying.
This is amazing because I didn't know this part about him either. So do you want to talk about what scrying is so that people understand what scrying is?
Oh, sure. So this is very interesting. So with scrying is it's the idea of you're using some sort of reflective surface to utilize as a focal point either during your meditations or you're actually trying to try to see into that reflective and see if you can either call on spirits, foresee things. There's a lot of different ways. One of the famous ones people think about with scrying is John Dee and Edward Kelly. John Dee did a scrying with a obsidian mirror, and he would scrying it, and then Edward Kelly would then talk about what they saw in the mirror, and they would translate that and everything. Now with Nostradamus, his method of scrying was actually with a brass bowl that he would have with water and herbs in it. So he probably it was probably a mix of water and herbs, and that would probably give off a certain smell or scent that would help him set his mind into a meditative state when he did this scrying. A lot of times you'll see people when they do scrying is usually in a very darkened room, either with very little to no light. Sometimes you'll see with a candle. One of the methods is having the candle reflective in the surface, but you can't see your own face, but you can look at the reflective, and that's supposed to help induce your seeing visions and whatnot.
Now, I have to say this because I think it's important. I feel like the current media, Hollywood, has made it out to be that, like with Bela Lugosi's mirror, that scrying is dark and demonic. And, of course, mirrors are considered portals. Do you think scrying is dark and demonic?
No.
No.
Short answer, no. No. There's a lot of cultures and a lot of practices that involve scrying. There's a lot of talks about mirror surfaces being utilized both as scrying, but also have magical properties about them. So there's a very long history to it. So it's not a new thing that he was doing either. But I don't think there's anything inherently evil about it. Like, a lot of times this can be just a meditative practice you do. You're not necessarily calling on anything. You could just be sitting in a dark room focusing on what you're trying to bring forth in your own practice and everything. So it's not like suddenly a Bloody Mary moment.
Yes, that's okay.
Pounce out the mirror.
I'm glad that you... And once again, it goes deeper than that of, like, protecting your space, putting boundaries down with your space, like the ways we talked about earlier. It's a lot deeper than just what... I don't know. I just don't like the way scrying's always portrayed in Hollywood. Because to me, it's always like there's going to be a demon come through the mirror. Or like you said, especially Bloody Mary, that's the first thing that I think of. 100%. 100%.
Well, I can understand, like, on a visceral level where, like, so some of the funeral practices usually involve when someone has passed, you cover all the mirrors in the house, and you reflect the surface. And that was supposed to be the idea that so that the spirit of the recently departed person who was still trying to acclimate to the fact that they had passed didn't get trapped, or you didn't accidentally see them in the mirror or anything. So a lot of times you'll see homes that if they're going through a recent mourning, that a lot of the mirrors will be covered and everything. That was especially popular in the Victorian age.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I just think it's cool.
I can understand, like, I personally am not a fan sometimes when walking through a haunted location, looking at reflective surfaces, because I see enough horror movies in the back of your brain. You do think about something standing behind you, just hanging out there. Mm-hmm.
I have seen things in mirrors, and I'm not even scrying. I haven't even been scrying. But once again, it doesn't mean it's going to be, Jason coming out from, Camp Krystal Lake. You know what I mean? So it's just, I like to get specific. I think that scrying can be a very sacred practice too, because even I was starting to watch that series that you told me to watch, Netflix with Tyler Henry. He has like this new series, and I think I'm on like episode 4, but he's talking about scrying in it. So Tyler Henry is like the celebrity medium, and I'm just really, really fascinated by him in general. But there's a series on Netflix that Elfie watched first, and she told me to watch it, and basically it's about the behind the scenes of like what happens to him after he like goes to like do a reading for people, and he goes on these private readings and he's like drained for days. Sometimes when he feels like he doesn't have information coming through about the deceased person, he will scry. He also uses tarot cards. And I just really, really loved that it was in such a positive light for once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't in a dark, like, oh, I don't know. I think at this point we are all so burnt out on like the demon thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're just burnt out. I think we're just tired of hearing about it.
Well, also, I like the fact that he opened up about the fact that it does drain him, that it does wear him out when he does readings, that even though he does enjoy doing it, that he builds a little closet room to do his mirror scrying. He's very invested in trying to make deeper connections and do this, but he still is very realistic, going like, no, this wears me out. Mm-hmm. And I have to have a recovery period. I don't think that's often talked about or is looked at as like a bad thing, but it's like, no, you just expended a lot of energy interacting with a person, trying to make connections with them. That will tire anyone out.
Yeah, he talked about, which we'll get back on Nostradamus in a sec, but he talked about having a collapsed lung from he did a reading on somebody and he had a collapsed lung, and he thinks it was related to the reading because he said he feels literally what these people died from. Like, they make him feel the same thing. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a good series if you guys want something new to watch on Netflix. I'm not done with it, but it's really good so far. So basically, Nostradamus is scrying in this bowl, and that's where he starts seeing these prophecies and these visions.
Yep. So he starts doing meditations, and then he starts doing the scrying. And he does this apparently at night. And you have to remember too, like this is something he has to be very careful about doing too, because he is a public figure, more or less, in this time period. And this is very volatile time of the church is pretty much in everyone's business. Mm-hmm. And you don't want
we could say
give them any kind of possibility that there should be. Yes, but even more so. But, yeah. So you don't want to give them any hint of possibility that they might like look towards you or like investigate you, because that will not end well when the church decides that they want to investigate you.
Wow.
So he has to be kind of very down low about this. So, but it's interesting that he then starts publishing almanacs on these. Now this is where I think this gets interesting when we think of Nostradamus and his prophecies. Is these are quatrains, which are 4 lines, and they look kind of more like interesting poems and such. And they always look so strange. Like if you sit down and actually read the quatrains, they make very little sense at times. But when you read the history of it, you understand why he had to make it very vague or very unusual.
Well, they've been interpreted too, and also I feel like the language was just different too. I think it was a handful of things. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because also you have to remember these sort of translated from French to English, so the interpretation might be different too. Mm-hmm. But so he starts publishing in, I think, 1554. He begins, or 1550, he begins publishing these almanacs. Now, what's really cool too is these almanacs are not just a bunch of the quatrains of his prophecies, but they're like, think of almost like farmers' almanacs today. Mm-hmm. They were the quatrains, but on top of that, he had his astrology charts, his predictions in the astrology area and everything, and then also like recipes and this, that. And he does this for a while, from 1550 to like 1564, like every single year.
I didn't realize that he had forecasts, is what they're called, prophecy forecasts, all the way till year 3797.
Yeah, no, I was surprised by that. I'm like, wow, he went pretty far.
He did. Considering he was in the year 1500, that's a chunk that he was just sitting there scrying every night. You know what I mean? Like, wow. And he's been accurate with a lot of things, but that can also be up to negotiation, I guess. You know what I mean?
My eyes hurt just thinking about him sitting in a dark room looking into this water and writing stuff down.
I still think that this was related to his wife and his kids dying, honestly. I just think that I'm telling you, because now that my mom died in January, it's a shock to the system.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely traumatic when I used to hear people talk about stuff and they'd say like, oh yeah, my mom died. And I couldn't relate. I can't relate to that because I'm like, Jesus, that's horrible. I can't even imagine. And then my own mother, died the way she did, which, by the hands of someone else. And oh my God, it is traumatizing when someone like dies like that, that's close to you. And like him being a physician couldn't control it. And I think that it made me look at life on this planet completely differently. And so I can really relate to him in that sense of losing his wife and kids. He probably feels like he could have, in a sense, stopped them from dying. It's probably almost like survivor's guilt in a way. And he wants to connect with the other side more and more and more until it's such an obsession that he's gone scrying to the point where he's in the year 3797. Like, my God, like that's taking it far,
Oh yeah. Well, also on top, it's like you have trauma on top of it because you have the loss of his family. Then you have also him traveling around seeing, like, he didn't save every person that he helped. So he's experienced the loss of patients. He's experienced the seeing basically whole Belgium.
That's true.
Wiped out.
Yeah, I didn't even think, you're right. He probably saw bodies and massive amounts of death to the point where
this was a lifetime of seeing nothing but death. Really,
that's true. He was probably already living in a sense on the other side because of what he'd witnessed. Because that's a lot of death to experience. You're right. Like, that's not normal. And it's not normal even for a normal physician, because how many times does the plague come around like that? You know what I mean? So you're right. It probably took him to a whole different place.
Well, also I can see too, this person, he was a physician, he was an astrologer, he was definitely an intelligent man, and he knew history, so when you look at his doctrines and everything, his prophecies, I feel like sometimes, like, it's almost like he was trying to write in a way to create preventative stuff, where you see these predictions of, he could already see, because we already went through this once, no doubt we'll go through this again. If we can prevent some of this, that'd be great. So I sometimes wonder if some of his predictions were him just seeing the pattern of our history and seeing where could this go on and do the same thing.
True. I think that's a smart way of looking at it, because I don't think that most people, I think he was way ahead of his time. That was another reason I wanted to look at his astrology, because I was like, where are his Aquarius placements? Because Aquariuses are usually like way out there. My Aquarius moon can get real cray-cray sometimes. And I assumed he was like an Aquarius moon, honestly, because sometimes I should not be left alone to think sometimes. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking this guy to be left alone to think, whoa, look what, you know what I mean? Like, and he was so ahead of his time, because I feel like most people in the 1500s didn't give a crap about what he was talking about. Like, Aquarians are also known for being humanitarians and like saving the planet and saving the earth and being about like, how can I, be a light worker and level up like society. And I feel like that was what he was trying to do essentially with this, was like literally looking into the future of humanity. How can I help it? How can I predict it? How can I warn them? And it was like he was way ahead of himself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you have to think, too, is it feels like, at least with the amount of travel he did, amount of work he did, that his job as both a physician but also doing work as astrology, I don't think it was so much like, because a physician usually could work their way up in society through the court and through different levels just because of their influence and their ability to basically save people's lives. I feel like his work as a physician was probably, yes, some of it probably was trying to work through society and go up and higher in society, but I really think a lot of it probably was trying to help people and save people too, especially the fact that he went against the grain of what every other physician told him, like, this is how you're supposed to do it. It's like, no, I don't think that'll work, and try new ways.
See, and that doesn't even stand out as much to me as it does of the church being so involved and being so in control It was
Yeah.
probably almost like life-threatening for him to go against what the church was saying at that time.
Oh yeah, I
And
mean,
even though
like
he
I
was
said,
being careful, he was still, people were going to catch on eventually, you know?
oh for sure. I mean, like I said, going all the way back, his family had to convert to another religion just to keep themselves safe. So it was probably very much indoctrinated into him that no, you gotta make sure that even that the front public scene is all good, because if it's not, they will bring you in and question you. So from a very young age, he was probably already taught that no, we gotta present this way because it's for our safety.
Oh, so I missed a question too from somebody. Middle American said, do you guys think that psychic abilities are hereditary? Yes, I do. And once again, I still think Elfie's right by saying it's a muscle that you have to flex and sort of grow. But I got an ability when my mom died, and it's not an ability I'm proud of. My whole life, my mom said, I'm indigenous. My grandmother was off the res. My grandmother had abilities. My mom has abilities. I didn't really get abilities till my mom died, which is very strange, but I guess that's how it works. But my mom, my whole life would say this, and I there was a podcast I did with her, so some of you heard her say this, but her ability was, I can see death in people's eyes. And it sounds dark, and it is. And since she died, I can see death in people's eyes, and it's horrible. You're right, Elfie, I should probably work to turn that shit off. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not a fun one to have. But yeah, I think that they're hereditary. Do you?
Oh yeah, I think it's a mix where you can have a hereditary where it's more likely to come down through the family, but it doesn't mean even if you have no psychics whatsoever in your family, it doesn't mean that it's not possible. It's just if it is passed down, it might be more likely. And don't know what Krystal said, you might not get this not so much fun ones due to it might coming down through the family too.
I used to tell my mom, don't give me that. I don't want, and then she gave it to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's horrible. You know what I'm saying? It's terrible.
Unfortunately, I feel like that's one of those things because a lot of people are like, I want to be psychic, I want to see things,
No, you don't.
But then you hear about the people who are like, no, not really. You don't want to see that.
I saw something in my house one time. I can't remember when it was. This was I think this was before Paranormal Challenge. This was like pre 2011. I was in bed one night, and have you ever just had that feeling? And this is really like my amateur days of ghost hunting, where like I definitely got followed home a lot, did not get them out of my house. They camped it there for weeks, months, you know what I mean? Like pretty soon my house is really haunted. Now it's like an emergency situation, you know, like that was that era of Krystal. But I had something follow me home, and what I was doing was, this was like when I first started like understanding about spirit guides and your spirit team. And I was like, you know what? I really want to see, an energy. I want to understand what it's like to be psychic. I did. And
what you wish for.
Yeah, you do. Seriously. And I was like, I'm open to it. I'm not afraid. Like, and once again, when you get these abilities, you, like Elfie said, you have to set boundaries, and you have to say, I don't want to see, like, for example, how the person died in their death, because that's like messed up. You know what I mean? But anyway, I was asleep this night, and I was like, oh, I feel like, I'm going to get this ability. And I opened my eyes, and next to my side of the bed, there was a little girl in a white gown, probably from the 1800s. She pretty much looked like the girl from The Ring. So she looked like she fell in a well, and she had her hair all forward, wet, dripping. And I mean, I'm telling you what, that was the clearest vision. Like, if that was whatever that was, a vision right in front of me, okay? It scared me so bad. Because it was whole. It looked like a person. I thought there was someone there. That's how real it was. And after that, I was like, I don't ever want to see anything ever again. That was way too real. I think she had drowned. Like, I didn't know if it was, and it was in the middle of the night, and you see this, like, and it was illuminating because she's in a white gown. And that was the one and only time I ever saw something. So yeah, be careful what you wish for. It does startle you. And then, I have friends that get visions of people, how they actually died. And that is traumatizing to see somebody that's, in their death state. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, God. That's horrible, Elfie. I just can't do it.
I know, especially the idea of something, like, I've seen some weird stuff, I've seen some, and it's one of those things, it's one of those, like, moments where, no, you definitely feel like something's in the room, it's no question that you're just like, oh, it's a code or something, it's like, no, really, there's something in the room with you, and you're like, ah, crap.
I know. It's true. And that feeling's bad enough, not, let alone.
I don't need a 3D vision of, like, the ring girl standing next to my bed.
Yeah, someone asked what color was her hair. Black. Yeah, black. She was like wearing an 18, like she was probably 12 or 13 years old. I could tell by the height. You know what I mean? Like kind of short still. And, like a little kid's like nightgown from the 1800s. So like the white lace, long sleeved, long to the floor. I mean, it's very specific. You know what I mean? But yeah, her hair was black and it was like over her face and she was just pouring wet, dripping wet to the point where I thought I could hear water drops falling on the floor.
Oh, wow.
And that's why, and I got up, I screamed. I thought there was like a little homeless kid in my house or something. Somebody needed it was emergency. Somebody needed some Jesus. You know what I mean? Like ambulance right now. And I turned the light on, gone, totally gone. And that scared me so bad. I was like, yep, I don't want to ever, I'm good. I'm good with the visions. I was like, should have been more specific. You know what I mean? Was not specific enough on the abilities.
Oh, no, I feel like that's, especially, I've heard people like, I want someone to open my third eye. I'm like, no, you don't.
Cat sees things. And she doesn't know when she's going to either. That's like the worst part.
Surprise.
Yeah, it is. So she can't control it. Like the same night she talked about, we were literally staying in the Jerome Hotel and she woke up in the middle of the night and she's like, and we even had a light on and she saw a crawler on the floor. And she just rolled over and back to bed.
That's when you know you've kind of gotten that desensitized where you're like,
yep,
not tonight.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not dealing with you. I'm done. We're over it. So yeah, it's true. I mean, the abilities, I don't think like you think of the dark stuff necessarily, but like even how people died normally is just traumatic enough. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that like 13 Ghosts is such like an accurate depiction of that, of just like how you could see through the glasses. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That feels like how it is with if you have like your abilities and you put glasses on. It's especially like the princess who was like slaughtered and cut up. You know what I mean?
Well, that and also like it. Even though yes, it's very Hollywoodized, it's still that the way they would present the ghosts, like they were kind of shifting almost in and out of a phase. That sometimes, like, because you don't see them always like full front right in front of you. It's always kind of like side view, and you're looking, and you're like, "Am I seeing what I'm seeing?" And it's kind of there, kind of not. It's
I think it's out of the. This is just a theory that I have, like why you see things out of the corner of your eye, or like. Have you ever been in your house and you just like see someone walk by or something and you're like, bro, something just walked by? I think that it's because that's like our subconscious. We're not focused on those areas on the side. You know what I mean? Like we're too busy looking ahead and doing something. Our subconscious is chilling over here and you're like, yeah, I just saw something. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I think that is that, and it's an interesting thing when it's like you have both kind of a visual going on in the room, but also kind of a picture in your mind's eye too. It's like kind of melding together. It's like, this is weird.
It is. It's true. Well, and then you feel it, and you're like, yeah, I know something's going on here. I do think too, when you're in paranormal, and the more you investigate, the more haunted locations you go, it does start to build your abilities in different ways. I'm not saying you're going to be like Nostradamus. I'm not saying you're going to be a medium. But I'm just saying that, like, I get weird, like, flashes, images of when I'm in locations of, like, what happened when it was, like, an active location or whatever. You know what I mean?
I think you kind of become a little more attuned. Like, not so much, like, full-on psychic, but you just, you start to be able to differentiate between something odd going on or between that and you're just like weirded out by the location because the location, like your brain starts to fine tune what is possibly something unusual going on and a regular feeling of this is a creepy place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more you do investigations, the more attuned you kind of become with that.
Mm-hmm. Diana said she's having some bad dreams and like she thinks they're visions. You know, you do. I think you need to connect with your guides too, and tell your guides what you allow in and what you allow out, because they will help block it for you. Because that was me when I was like, nope, done with the girl from the ring. We're done after that. And like, I've seen some other things, but nothing ever that was like, oof, that was not fun. You know what I'm saying? That really did scare me. That scared me to the point where I was like, I think my guides were like, oh yeah, you want this ability now? You let me know. And I'm like, no, I don't. Take the ability. I don't want it.
It went from 0 to 100, apparently. They're like, oh, you this.
So it was like they were messing with me, you know what I mean? Like, it's not funny. Okay, back to Nostradamus. Let's go back to him. Let's see, we were talking about, so he basically wanted to create 10 volumes, and each of the volumes would contain 100 predictions that went all the way up to year 3797.
Yep.
And
so the book was called, the prediction was called Centuries, and apparently, let's see, 1554, he started this, in within a year, he had published first 7 volumes.
Wow. Can you imagine, like, think about that for a second. 1 year, he publishes his first 7 volumes. This man is not sleeping. He is literally up every night, not only getting these prophecies and scrying, but also writing them down, turning them into books, and literally getting them published. Like, how did he do it so fast?
Well, and the thing is, what it sounds like, too, is like he was both pulling, so he was pulling from the almanacs he had already published, but it sounds like he was probably adding more to them as well. So, like, more predictions on top of what he had already done. So it was like a combination of probably new and old quatrains and everything. But what's really interesting, too, is he did the first 7, but he had the last 3 made, but he said that he didn't want them published until after his death.
Interesting. I find that very interesting. It's almost like he was afraid, like backlash or something. Yeah, like, I don't want to be here when this is like published, so let me be dead 6 feet in the ground and then go ahead and publish my, all my workings.
Pretty much. It's like, I'll wait until I'm gone and you guys can like fight over this.
Yeah, it's strange, but that's pretty specific for him to make that decision. You know what I mean? Which they were.
Oh yeah.
So now we're moving forward. So he was like literally doing astrology charts for like the Queen of France.
Yeah.
Horoscope
he
charts.
Very popular.
Yeah, he was like, I mean, I'm sure that paid well.
Oh yeah.
He was one of the most professional astrologers for his time. And of course he was criticized, but I feel like that just comes along with that,
I feel like, in fact, then that lets you know you made it when someone has to publish an entire pamphlet talking about how much they don't like your astrology and think you're a hack. It's like, oh, he made it for sure, because someone had to put that much work into it.
I'm reading through it. So he was also popular in French court, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And so I feel like maybe now he's at a point where he feels a little bit more safe, if that makes sense, to speak out against like religion organizations, because now he's really made a name for himself. So he feels safer.
Probably say, like, because this is where I find it interesting, because so he was doing this the scrying, and that would be considered a no by the church, but he was doing astrology, and that was kind of a gray area with the church and everything. So it's one of those things where I guess because the court was cool with it, and they're like, yes, do our astrology charts, do our predictions. But I think it was like when it got into realm of it was one thing to do someone's birth chart and go like, here's your birth chart and everything. But when you start predicting beyond just simply the birth chart of what will happen to them in the future, that's when the church probably was like, no, you can't do that. So it's this interesting gray area.
I agree with that, but I also think that it was like, okay, people of power, like, we're talking about the Queen of France, whatever, have the money to be able to pay him, because a normal, Joe Schmo wouldn't be able to afford to pay him to do an astrology chart, right? So he's making money from the quote elites, essentially.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
almost like the elites wanted in on the information, but they didn't want the little people to be on the information in a way.
Well, and this is also kind of like interesting area because this is not too dissimilar to like going back with like John D. and Amber Kelly. Like they were prominent in Queen Elizabeth the first time. Like they were in her court, and they were doing even more questionable things that the church probably wouldn't like compared to what Nostradamus was doing. But yeah, it was that idea because the court, even though the church had a lot of power, they what they said went pretty much, even above the court.
Mm-hmm.
But the courts, the royal court still had its own power and still had wiggle room in some ways. So he probably did feel a slight bit of safety being in the good favor of the King Queen of France.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the Queen of France, like she had him do the astrology charts for her children and everything. So they must have felt comfortable with him and whatnot, and thought he was cool. So this is probably where he did think he was good now. I'm in the court, it's all good.
I'm safe now, right? So one of the biggest things that he predicted was Adolf Hitler from 1889 to 1945. And of course, you're going to once again talk about critics who said that, oh, he was too vague, it wasn't specific enough. I think the writings on each segment are fairly small. Obviously, if he's doing... I don't think people realize how many volumes he actually created.
Oh,
like, that was a lot of work, you know what I mean? So I don't think you'd have time but to make a little blurb on, like, each one. And once again, going back to, you're interpreting something from a different language, you're interpreting something from an entirely different time, and it is going to be, like, what? And, you know, you have to rely on who's interpreting it, if it's being interpreted correctly, unless you can speak that language at that time.
Yeah, and also, like I said, he had to be very vague with this, too, because sometimes when people are like, well, why didn't he just write down the date and time and everything? It's like, well, you're scrying also in the bowl, so I'm not sure if
there's going to be like
time would pop
12,
up in the
16. Yeah, no, I agree. And I also have said this too, like, first of all, I'm going to just be honest. I've said this before. I am, like, extremely skeptical at this point when it comes to, like, psychics and mediums because I've been through it the last 6 months with them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I will say that, like, a lot of people get mad at, like, psychics and mediums if they do get, like, one thing wrong. And you have to remember, like, they're still human. And, like, I don't think anybody's perfect. And I do feel like the future is always subject to change. So just because they saw this thing at that time doesn't mean, like, something in the, quote, butterfly effect changed it for it to be a different result now, right?
Yeah.
And so he also had the U.S. space station, the Challenger, that exploded in 1986. I mean, there's been a few others. I didn't realize he died from gout. That's horrible.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you also have to remember he was definitely of a upper class and everything, and they, I think, called gout the rich person's disease or something like that. But it's more fascinating because when people think about his predictions, they're like, why is this so vague? And it's like, well, because the church in this. But also, if you have someone from the 1500s looking at images of what, like, planes, cars, modern equipment, and then you have them like, okay, now describe to me what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it through a bowl.
Through a bowl in dim lighting.
Yeah.
I think that's why it probably was vague, because it's like, well, I kind of see this metal thing flying in the air. It looks kind of like a bird.
And it exploded.
That's probably as close as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and at that time, you know, spacecraft didn't exist. So how would he have known what to call? He's not going to be like, okay, the words the U.S. Space Station Shuttle, the Challenger popped up on it. You know, it's not like, it's like, it is. It makes me laugh because I don't think people realize, like, you know, especially scrying is difficult. Yeah, it's not, you're not watching a television, like, geez, you know.
Although, it wasn't on, like, computer screen.
No. So, okay, he has top predictions, which I think are kind of interesting. So I'm going to let you start them.
Let's see here. So the biggest one, of course, was actually during his lifetime was his prediction of the death of King Henry II, which was like from the French court that he was a part of and everything. And I believe he even gave them warning like this will happen, and it came to pass. Mm-hmm. More or less, one of the more detailed ones that actually line up closer to what we think he was predicting. So the quatrain, which was from Century 1, quatrain 35, was the young lion shall overcome the old one in martial field by a single duel. In a gold cage he shall put out his eye, 2 wounds from one, and then he shall die cruel death. And so what had happened was King Henry II was a very athletic person. He did do jousting.
Mm-hmm, jousting.
And
got jousted in the eye. Oh, you got jousted in the eye.
Well, what happened was apparently he was jousting, and the lance had veered off the armor, broke, and a splinter actually went through his helmet and went into his eye, and it was apparently a long, painful death.
Got a bad eye, man. Oh, but think about what Elfie just read. It sounds like actual poetry, really. Mm-hmm. So honestly, he, obviously he's well educated too, but for him to even like create these words is like kind of impressive.
Oh yeah,
kind of impressive.
He predicted. He passed it. Now we also have to remember too. These are quatrains that we think this is what they predicted. Like we've lined up as close as we could to the time, because even though it's written as centuries, it doesn't mean literally first, second century or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the quatrain 64 that they believe was his prediction of the 1919 flu influenza epidemic that happened during World War I. So the quatrain is, the scourge being passed, the world shall be made smaller, peace for a long time, lands inhabited, everyone shall go by air, land and sea, and then the war shall begin again. So he pretty much predicted the influenza, the end of World War I, the small time of peace, and then essentially the beginning of World War II.
Wow. Man. And then the next one is interesting. So this is from Quatrain 37. This is where he's actually warning the ozone layer and climate change. So this is like a current to date what we're going through. So the Quatrain 37, this is how it reads. Of the great number which shall be sent to relieve the, besegist of the fort, plague and the famine shall devour them all except 7 that shall be beaten, which has basically been interpreted as a warning on biological warfare and destruction on both plant and animal life. It's a prediction of the damage to the ozone layer that's currently happening in the climate change. So now you see why people are interpreting this difficult, because they're like, well, how did you come up with that? You know what I mean? And there's literally like current day and age astrologers that have looked this, and I'm sorry, not astrologers, philosophers. I meant to say philosophers that have read through this and are able to determine. And most of these philosophers are people that have studied historical facts, literally how they communicated at the time he was alive. You know what I mean? In the 1500s, and how it would interpret to modern day language. Mm-hmm. Man, he's got a lot of interesting ones. We don't need to read all of them. We gave some good examples, but the Great London Fire of 1666, he predicted that. He's talking about the predictions of aircraft and spacecraft with military implements in outer space warfare. Is that Space Force? Space Force?
Yep.
Space Force.
He even predicts like... he even predicts the possibility of like alien encounters and alien life forms, like us like basically having contact and everything. So it's this is why I find it interesting, because this is still going on. These prophecies are still being interpreted and trying to figure out what they mean. I mean, a lot of times when we think of the prophecies, we think of like the ones from like predicting World War I, World War II, and but there are people who are still trying to figure out what his later quatrains mean. Like, are any of them lining up with what's going on now?
Are we moving to Mars? That's the question.
Are we moving to Mars?
With Elon, because I just don't think I want to. You know what I mean? The prediction of the end of the Cold War in the Soviet Union that fell, he predicted that. He predicted the American Civil War. He, let's see, what's this one?
Actually, there was one. Where did I put it?
Prediction of spacecraft landing on. This is the alien one that you were talking about. He's predicting a spacecraft that's landing during a great war on Earth. Well, that could be happening anytime, man. You know what I'm saying? At this point, if an alien ship landed, I don't think any of us would be shocked. That would just be the icing on the cake. In fact, if they want to take anyone with them home, I will volunteer myself. Let me go pick up my dog. I'm ready to leave. You know what I'm saying? 20th century possibility of the 1920s rise and crash before the Great Depression. He also predicted. So that's interesting. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was actually interesting. I was going through the book very properly, and there was one that stuck out to me that I kind of thought, like, wait, did he predict spiritualism?
Wouldn't doubt it. Honestly, I don't think that'd be too far-fetched. Do you?
Oh, no. Well, okay, so it's Quatrain 41, and it says, the bones of the feet and hands in shackles. By noise a house shall be a long time deserted. By a dream the buried shall be taken out of the ground. The house shall be suburious and inhabited without noise.
Yeah, some of those words, man. Like, I skipped over one because it was not. Just like I made it up.
Wait, is he maybe talking about spiritualism? Wait, what?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Well, and then read what it means interpreted, day and age.
Mm-hmm.
A ghost shall inhabit this house.
Yep, a ghost shall inhabit the house.
Go ahead, you can do it.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was just looking up. Didn't he have Rona predictions for? I wanted to look that up.
I had not yet gotten that far.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. I got that. I have it pulled up right here. I have an article on it. So that was something I was just interested in. So you can find tons of articles on where they've depicted his words from the 1500s. But okay. So let's talk about current prophecies for 2022 from Nostradamus. And I'm not going to read the quatrains because my God.
Yeah, some of those words are just like...
Jesus, take the wheel. You know what I'm saying? So one thing he predicts is the death in 2022, so that's current, the death of a political leader. Some people are saying could be Kim Jong-un. Some people are saying Queen Elizabeth. Some even say Joe Biden. He's saying dramatic climate effects will change, like here currently. It's basically saying that the Black Sea will almost boil due to climate change. Wow, that's horrifying to think about that. Although that is happening with the reefs. They're saying they're literally just dying because it's too hot, like the water. He has predicted inflation and starvation, saying that his fellow man to eat in his despair. So that's happening right now. The rise of technology. So they think this is related to cryptocurrency for 2022. And then he's saying that there's going to be a fall of the European Union and, quote, sacred temples of the Roman time will reject the foundations of their own foundation. So that's interesting. They're also saying that could be in relation to Brexit.
Oh, I can see that, yeah. No, and there's still been, it's still going on and everything. So I can definitely.
Okay, so this also, and this is another article, and I haven't done enough research on it, but it says there's false posts that have been made about the 16th century philosopher Nostradamus, claiming that he did predict Rona. I'm not saying the real word, because, you know what I'm saying. Oh, Kat just said we just hit 33K on GGD TikTok. Holler. Woohoo. So anyway, he didn't actually predict that Rona, is what they're saying. That was a false thing being spread just via social media. I couldn't remember. So anyway, I don't know. He's it's interesting. Him, just like, we've talked about H.P. Lovecraft in the past. We've talked about Edgar Allan Poe, and I mean, I know they're all like in different areas because they were like writers that had like, some sort of weird connect to the other side. And he's like a philosopher, astrologer that has a weird connection to the other side. But it is weird how these people didn't get so famous till like literally way after they were dead.
Oh, well, and like we've been saying too, is I didn't realize until I started researching it that he's so it's such a narrow portion of his life he's well known for, even though he did so much outside of that. Like we've been showing that the astrology and the predictions didn't happen until much later in his life. So his whole other life was trying to save people, and I'm like, this person was very fascinating and more to him than just his prophecies.
You know, putting a paranormal twist to this now that we're sort of, you know, weaning down on this podcast is why haven't people gone to try to trace his life and investigated locations where he lived? I mean, yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
That would be very cool.
Like, I'm kind of over the, like, haunted bar and, like, yeehaw, you know, like, in downtown Nashville. Like, can we do something cooler? Can we, like, take it to another level? Like, and, you know, I don't know. These buildings may or may not be standing, you know, in Remy, France, or in Salon, France. But I bet you, I don't know, if those areas or those villages are so old, there's a lot of places, especially in Europe, that are still standing to this day.
Well, also, if you want to think about, too, like, the time he spent doing his meditation, doing his grind, everything, just think of how much energy he put into that night after night, and then investigating that space.
Residual energy, yeah. There, even if he's not, I mean, I doubt he's just hanging out there, but I mean, it is, yeah, residual energy, and like, I don't think it'd be that hard to try to trace it. It wouldn't even be fun to like go to these locations and like and film your like journey trying to trace him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, even it'd be really cool just doing a scrying session where he did and everything. Just almost recreate that portion and everything would be amazing.
I'm just saying. There's some cool stuff.
Leave out the plague.
Leave the plague behind. You know what I'm saying? Just leave it back there. A lot of people in chat, Elfie, have been talking about how much they love you and they love Paranormal State. That was their favorite.
Aw, thank you.
I know, and now we got her. I stole her. I snatched Elfie up, and here we are. And now
Talk about Nostradamus.
And now we're goat girls. You know what I'm saying? With Cat's leprechaun foot, and here we are. And the rest is history.
And crawlers.
And crawler, yeah. Oh man, I'm glad I didn't see that. I don't know. I wouldn't have been as calm as Cat. I probably would have like slapped her with my arm and be like, "Get up, we have to leave."
Chill. That's a whole nother level of chill of this rolling over.
Yeah, but I'm proud of her because, like, she's been with us for, like, 4 or 5 years now. And compared to where she was when she first got involved, like, she just couldn't sleep at all at night when we're in a haunted location. And I told her, I was like, over time, it's going to get easy.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, no, I just don't think I can. And now she's like, out in 5 minutes. You know, like, she doesn't care. She's like, whatever. She's a crawler. I'm going back to bed. I'm not dealing with this. You know what I mean? So, oh, my God.
Not tonight.
It's true. Well, do you have anything else to add? I think that was great.
No, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, definitely look him up, look up his entire life and everything. There's so much about him, and honestly, read the prophecies themselves, not just like what you find in articles, because, like Krystal said, they're very poetic, like too.
There's a lot of words I can't pronounce, but I'm gonna say they're actually really beautiful, and I don't. Why isn't it considered poetry too? Like, why is it just? It is. It's pretty. Like, he was eloquent with his words. You know what I mean? Like, I'm impressed. Which, I mean, he did have his doctorate, which did take some level of university education. So, but wow, you know, like, you read that stuff and it's like, okay, yeah, that was really pretty. Like, I'm just kind of impressed, however you want to interpret it or not. You know what I mean? That is our podcast on Nostradamus, and that was good. That was fun. I love Elfie's topics. She always has those like in-depth, you know, weird topics, and it's better than just like skimming the surface. Kat said, "Please stop talking about the leprechaun foot." She still has phantom pains. And I know
that's not going away anytime soon.
No, I'm sorry, Kat. I think you're stuck with that phantom pain. Make sure you're following us on TikTok. It's going amazing. I wanted to just chat about that really briefly. Passing the 20K mark was really, really important to me. And the reason is that my original YouTube channel, when it was at its peak, the old YouTube channel, was at like 191,000 subscribers. And I was about to hit, 200,000 subscribers. And then when the Logan Paul thing hit, obviously my views were rolled backwards, videos disappeared, and the subscriber count was rolled back to 19K. And I never could recover from it. Never. We still upload, and we still, it's crazy. Like, I watch numbers, and I even have Kat on there as an analytic manager because I want her to like make sure I'm not crazy. But we'll gain like 50 followers and then we lose 50 followers. So it's almost like we're stuck at an algorithm on that channel that we will never surpass 20K. And I think that it put me in a creative rut for a few years, because I was so frustrated. Like, how do you build up this channel with hundreds of videos and you get like screwed? You know what I mean? Like, you get told, and I know I'm not, Elfie and I were talking about this earlier. I wasn't the only paranormal YouTuber that went through this. There was many. In fact, the whole community that was online at that time all went through the same thing. We all lost our channels. And it's like trauma. Honestly, it's traumatic. So anyway, long story short, going forward is that now that we've had such success with TikTok, we surpassed the 20K mark on the phone. I was on the phone with Kat and I was literally crying because it was like I got a refresh of energy. You know what I mean? It was like, I felt like I was on a hamster wheel running for years, trying to fix this, channel that had been squashed like a bug through the algorithm, and I couldn't fix it. And I felt like a failure in a way, because I was like trying and uploading and doing all this work and nothing's paying off. And now I'm like, wow, I'm back on track. Yeah. So yeah, we're at 33K, I think, on TikTok, like Kat said, which is awesome. Keep going up, only going up from here. I'm going to keep working. I've been working really hard on it. And so make sure you're following us there, because it's really important. That's going to be kind of one of our main hubs. I am also still building the new YouTube channel. Didn't do any uploads this week. I had a tough week, to be honest with you guys. I'm planning on doing 2 uploads a week on YouTube, the new YouTube channel. But, it was Mother's Day, and it was my birthday. I was actually born on Mother's Day, and my mom and I celebrated it every year. So I'm going to be honest, I had a really tough week with mental health with her being gone. It was really hard. So I just really couldn't do any uploads this week, and I didn't push myself. I just listened to my body and said, you know what, take a break and it's okay. So hopefully we'll get back on track with that. But it's, it's just sad. I really miss my mom a lot. I really miss her a lot. And she was my best friend. And there's an emptiness there that will never go away, especially with her being taken the way she was. And just be patient with me if you don't see any uploads or anything like that. We're going to keep building the new YouTube channel. Obviously, TikTok's going great. Podcast is amazing. And, make sure you follow Elfie on TikTok too. Like, life is good. Life is good. Someone said TikTok doesn't have a future. I don't know. I would have said YouTube would have been my main hub, but I got squashed there too. So I have some baggage with that. I got really burned with YouTube. So that's why it was so hard for me to come back for a while. You know what I mean? And all I know is I'm just going to stay positive and keep moving forward in a direction that we want to go and keep editing the feature. And that's where we're at. Right, Elfie?
Yep. I always up.
Always up from here. So I'm going to let Elfie go. Elfie, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have an amazing spooky weekend. And
you as well. This is always fun.
Always fun. Thank you, Elfie, so much.
Back from the dead.